Imagine being a 91-year-old grandmother in Taiwan, right?
Mhm.
And instead of your doctor telling you to take a gentle morning walk, they prescribe heavy barbell squats.
Right.
Or imagine a Japanese luxury toilet maker, like a company famous for high-end bathrooms, suddenly becoming the absolute essential backbone of the global artificial intelligence supply chain.
It sounds completely made up.
It really does. But today's show is an inspiring celebration of impossible ideas and the minds brave enough to chase them down. Launch your discussion with a CTA to subscribe and select the ringing bell. AI makes our show possible, but in a sea of 3 million new videos per day, finding passengers bold enough to embark on our good ship's journey is harder than most people think.
Yeah, that is very true.
So drop a very humane thumbs up right now to send your signal flare to drifting knowledge pirates like yourself. We know they're out there. Let's bring them home. We're keeping it lighthearted, as usual, but we promise to never skimp on the intelligence. Now, let's kick off this voyage with today's new revelations.
And, man, it is quite a voyage today. We're looking at a collection of materials curated by Dr. Alex Wisner-Gross.
Yeah, the dispatch is titled, Welcome to May 4, 2026, from the Innermost Loop.
Exactly. And I have to warn you, the listener, this material does not slow down to explain the basics. It is just a high-velocity snapshot of a world that is, frankly, accelerating so fast it almost induces vertigo.
Oh, totally.
We are looking at this wild tapestry that weaves together the race to artificial general intelligence, these trillion-dollar infrastructure projects, human-robot coexistence, and even the mathematical indexing of biological life.
Which is exactly why our mission for this deep dive is to tear it all apart and just look at the gears. We want to take this dense, overwhelming flood of updates and show you exactly how rapidly the so-called singularity is arriving.
Right.
And more importantly, how it's reshaping the physical world right in front of us. Because we aren't just talking about chatbots anymore.
No, not at all.
We are talking about the foundations of civilization fundamentally shifting. So let's start right at the edge of human intelligence. There's this staggering estimate right at the top of these updates. OpenAI's Greg Brockman is reportedly estimating that we are about 80% of the way to artificial general intelligence, or AGI.
Yeah, the 80% mark.
But wait, hold on. I need to push back on that immediately because in software development, there's a very famous rule of thumb, the Pareto principle, right?
Yeah, you're right, the 80-20 rule.
Exactly. The first 80% of the code takes 20% of the time, and the last 20% of the code takes the other 80% of the time. So is this 80% figure just, industry hype, or is there an actual quantifiable metric behind it?
Well, it's a totally valid skepticism.
Mm-hmm.
Especially given the historical hype cycles, those AI winters we've seen over the last 50 years.
Right.
But when figures like Brockman say we are 80% there, they aren't talking about lines of code. They're talking about the foundational architectural breakthroughs.
Okay, meaning what exactly?
Well, AGI means a system that can understand, learn, and apply knowledge across an infinite range of tasks at a level equal to or beyond a human, right?
Yeah.
So the 80% implies that the core mechanisms for learning the transformer architectures, the massive parameter scaling, the reinforcement learning from human feedback, all of that has been solved.
Oh, I see.
The foundation is poured, the framing is up, and we're basically just figuring out the plumbing in the roof. We aren't searching for a completely new paradigm of computer science anymore. We're just scaling and refining the one we have.
And that scaling is taking a very specific direction, right? Because Sam Altman is echoing this urgency in the sources. He's explicitly warning users to prep for their lives to fundamentally change with the leap that comes after GPT 5.5.
Yeah, that was a very stark warning.
And he makes this really distinct point. Everyone keeps demanding that AI gets cheaper and faster, but he argues that smarter is still the most vital metric. So if Altman is sounding the alarm to get ready for our lives to change, what does 80% to AGI actually feel like to you, me, and the listener?
Honestly, it feels like the ground shifting underneath your feet while you're still trying to maintain your balance.
That's a good way to put it.
For the average person, crossing that 80% threshold is the exact moment automation transitions from being this passive tool you use to a collaborator you work alongside, and then finally into an autonomous system that operates entirely independently of you.
Wow.
And we're already seeing this behavioral shift at the absolute highest levels of the industry.
Yeah.
The people who built these models are no longer interacting with them like software engineers.
Right. There is this incredible detail in the dispatch about Demis Hassabis, the head of Google DeepMind.
Oh, the chess thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's playing chess against Gemini, his own AI, specifically to trace its chain of thought. He is watching exactly when the model reasons itself into trouble. Think about that dynamic for a second.
That's wild.
It's no longer debugging code. It's like a parent watching a child ride a bicycle. You can't steer the handlebars for them anymore. They're pedaling completely on their own.
That's a great analogy.
But because you know your child's tendencies so intimately, you can see the exact micro movement, like the slight lean of the shoulder where they start to lose their balance, seconds before they even realize they are falling.
That is a phenomenal way to look at it because it highlights a fundamental shift in the entire discipline of computer science. These lab heads, they're no longer just programmers. They've essentially become cognitive anthropologists.
Cognitive anthropologists, I love that.
Right. They're studying synthetic cognition. When Hassabis plays chess against Gemini, he isn't checking for a syntax error in a Python script.
Right, because chess is a highly deterministic, constrained environment.
Exactly. And by putting a non-deterministic, probabilistic AI into that constrained environment, he is evaluating a reasoning process. He's watching an artificial mind deliberate, weigh future probabilities, maybe hallucinate a flawed strategy, and ultimately make a bad choice. He's mapping the psychology of the machine.
And they're trying to push that psychology from just guessing to actually knowing. Because we've always thought of large language models as like master bluffers, right?
Yeah, stochastic parrots.
Right. They just predict the next most likely word based on the billions of words they've read. But there is a massive update here about a company called Harmonic.
Oh, the formal reasoning agent.
Yes. They have built an agent that is currently solving novel, previously unsolved research problems in mathematics, and the proofs it's generating are being described by leading human theorists as correct, simple, elegant, and beautiful.
Which is huge.
It's massive. How do we get from a machine that just bluffs its way through a high school essay to a machine generating elegant mathematical truths?
Well, this is perhaps the most critical leap in bridging that final 20% to AGI that Brockman was talking about.
Yeah.
You have to understand the difference between probabilistic logic and formal logic.
Okay, break that down for us.
So, as you said, an LLM is probabilistic. It guesses the next word based on statistical likelihood. That's why it can write a beautiful poem, but it might completely hallucinate a historical fact.
Right.
Math, however, does not tolerate probability. Math requires rigorous, infallible, step-by-step truth. You absolutely cannot bluff a mathematical proof. If an AI misses a single negative sign on page 1, the conclusion on page 10 is catastrophically wrong.
So how is Harmonic actually doing it?
By integrating neural networks with symbolic reasoning. It's often called neurosymbolic AI.
Neurosymbolic, okay.
Yeah. The neural network provides the creative leap of, like, what if we tried this approach? But a formal symbolic engine verifies the logic at every single step.
Oh, wow. So it's double-checking its own intuition.
Exactly. So when human mathematicians call a machine-generated proof elegant and beautiful, they're recognizing that the system didn't just brute force every possible number. It exhibited an intuitive understanding of underlying logical structures and carved a highly efficient, completely novel pathway to the solution.
That is just, it's mind-blowing. It is no longer just memorization. It is true synthetic reasoning, which opens the door for AI to actually do science, rather than just summarize someone else's science. The source even mentions an open-source agentic AI physicist that can handle physics research end-to-end.
Yeah, end-to-end.
We're talking about a system that generates a hypothesis, designs a simulation, runs the data, and writes the paper.
All by itself.
All by itself. But there's a massive geopolitical undercurrent to who is building these minds. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, has a framework called KAISI.
Right.
And KAISI evaluates Chinese AI models as lagging behind U.S. models by about 8 months. But the independent analysis in our materials suggests that gap is actually vastly wider. Why is there such a discrepancy there?
Well, it really comes down to how you measure an artificial mind. The official 8-month gap is based on crude benchmark scores.
Like having the AI take a standardized test.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
But the independent analysts are looking deeper. They're looking at token usage and evil freshness.
Okay, let's break that down for the listener. What exactly do token usage and evil freshness mean in this context?
Sure. So a token is essentially a piece of a word. Token usage measures how much computational horsepower and context the AI requires to arrive at a correct answer.
Okay.
So if a U.S. model can solve a complex coding problem using, say, 500 tokens of thought, and a Chinese model requires 5,000 tokens of sprawling, inefficient thought to get that exact same answer.
The U.S. model is functionally vastly superior.
Exactly. Even if they both eventually pass the test, efficiency matters.
And what about evil freshness?
Evil freshness refers to whether the AI has secretly memorized the test.
Ah, like a student getting the answer key beforehand.
Precisely. If you use a benchmark test that has been on the internet for 2 years, an AI might just be regurgitating the answer it saw in its training data.
Right.
But when you test these models on brand new, highly complex problems like the math problems, Harmonic is solving the gap between the U.S. frontier models and the rest of the world widens dramatically.
So the theoretical frontier is heavily skewed American right now. But here is the catch. To build these synthetic minds, to host an AI physicist, to run a formal reasoning agent that does beautiful math, you need a physical footprint. You can't just run AGI on your old laptop.
Definitely not.
And according to the financial data we are looking at, this footprint is so unimaginably massive that it is literally bending the global economy into a completely new shape.
Yeah, we are rapidly transitioning away from the realm of software and into the brutal reality of hardware, concrete, and copper.
Seriously?
Morgan Stanley is now projecting that the 5 hyperscalers, think Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, and so on, they will spend $805 billion in capital expenditure in 2026
Wow.
and $1.1 trillion in 2027.
Okay, let me stop you right there because human brains are just very bad at comprehending the word trillion.
It's true.
$1 trillion in a single year. Now put that in perspective for you, the listener. The data notes that this $1.1 trillion is roughly equal to all non-tech S&P 500 capital expenditure combined. All of it. It's staggering.
Every oil company drilling new wells, every airline buying new jets, every manufacturing plant being built, every railroad laying down new track across the entire United States. All of their physical spending combined is equal to what just 5 tech companies are spending just to build artificial brains.
It really is an infrastructural mobilization that we haven't seen since wartime production in the 1940s.
Or maybe the massive build-out of the interstate highway system.
Yes. But this is solely dedicated to computing power. It completely strips away the idea that AI is just some software fad. You do not spend $1 trillion on concrete, cooling systems, tower plants, and miles of fiber optics for a slightly better autocomplete function.
Definitely not.
You spend $1 trillion because you possess a fundamental internal conviction that you are building the ultimate optimization engine of human history. And whoever builds it first commands the future.
And this spending is already the engine of the modern economy. David Sachs points out that AI accounted for 75% of all Q1 GDP growth, driven by a 2.5 to 3% capex tailwind. Yeah, the economic impact is immediate.
Now, to be clear, we are just looking at the economic reporting here impartially, but the implication is staggering. Polling might show that AI is a controversial topic, and some people are highly anxious about it, but economic growth is never unpopular. The reality is halting AI development right now would essentially be the equivalent of deliberately halting the entire U.S. economy. Think about your own local economy for a second. Whether you personally embrace AI or fear it, it is now fundamentally underwriting the GDP growth that keeps the nation afloat.
That is the inescapable macroeconomic reality. We've tethered our economic velocity to the expansion of compute. But what is truly mind-bending about this $1.1 trillion fleet of hardware is that it is currently operating at a fraction of its capacity.
Yeah, this part blew my mind.
We see reports that Elon Musk's XAI is using just 11% of its 550,000 NVIDIA GPUs.
11%. For context, Meta and Google are hovering around 43 to 46% utilization. If XAI has over 500,000 of the most sophisticated, expensive computer chips on the planet, and they are only using 11% of them, that means 89% of that $1 trillion engine is just sitting there idling.
Just idling.
Why? I mean, if you have a Ferrari, why are you driving it at 10 miles an hour?
It comes down to this concept of latent compute and the brutal logistics of networking. You can't just plug 550,000 GPUs into a wall and turn them on.
Right. It's not a toaster.
Exactly.
Right.
They have to talk to each other perfectly in microseconds to train a single model. The networking bottlenecks just synchronizing data across miles of fiber optics are immense. You're spending months just staging the data, testing the network fabric, and ensuring the cooling systems don't spontaneously fail.
Wow.
But the deeper answer to your question is preparation. They are idling because they're gearing up for computational demands that don't even fully exist yet.
Like the models Altman mentioned.
Right. They are preparing for the massive, continuous training runs required for the GPT 5.5 level models Sam Altman was warning us about.
So they are essentially paving a 10-mile runway before the airplane has even been invented.
That's a great way to put it.
And building that runway is forcing humanity to come up with completely wild logistical solutions for space and energy. Because you can't just put these data centers anywhere. The power grid can't handle it.
No, the power draw is insane.
Look at Japan. Their data center market is a $23 billion industry, expected to grow 50% by 2030. But Japan is an island nation. They do not have the sprawling, empty acres of the American Midwest to build massive server farms. So what are they doing? They are building 52-meter-high data towers rising straight out of urban Tokyo parking lots.
Yeah.
They are turning the data center into a skyscraper.
Which introduces absolute nightmares in terms of physics and engineering.
I can only imagine.
When you build a data center horizontally, heat rises and dissipates easily. But when you stack servers 52 meters high, the heat from the bottom floors aggressively cooks the floors above it.
Oh, of course.
So the cooling required for a vertical data center in a dense urban environment, it requires incredibly advanced liquid cooling loops and massive heat exchangers. But they have no choice. The data must be physically close to the financial and industrial hubs to reduce latency, and land is scarce.
But if cooling and land are the bottlenecks, why stay on Earth at all?
Now we're getting to the fun stuff.
Here is where it gets really interesting. A company called StarCloud is reportedly in talks for a $2.2 billion valuation just 1 month after closing a round at $1.1 billion. Their pitch: they are building solar-fed data centers in low Earth orbit.
It sounds totally like science fiction.
Completely.
But from a purely physical engineering standpoint, escaping the Earth's atmosphere perfectly solves the two greatest bottlenecks of the AI era: power generation and thermodynamics.
Walk us through the mechanics of an orbital data center.
Okay, so on Earth, a solar panel only works during the day, right?
Yeah.
And it has to fight through the atmosphere and clouds and weather. But in low Earth orbit, you have access to practically infinite, unfiltered, 24/7 solar irradiance. The power generation potential is just massive.
Wow.
And secondly, compute generates heat. On Earth, we use millions of gallons of fresh water to cool servers. In space, the ambient background temperature is roughly 3 Kelvin.
Which is what, just above absolute zero?
Exactly. Just above absolute zero. You have a limitless, completely free heat sink. You simply radiate the thermal energy out into the vacuum of space.
But wait, what about latency? If I send a prompt to an AI and the server processing it is orbiting the planet, isn't there a massive delay in bouncing that signal to space and back?
For real-time applications like a voice assistant,
Yeah.
yes, the latency might be a bit noticeable, but remember, the bulk of that $1.1 trillion isn't going toward running AI.
It's going toward training AI.
Exactly. Training is an asynchronous process. You beam terabytes of data up to the satellite, let it crunch the numbers for 3 months using free solar power and infinite cooling, and then it beams the finished, optimized model back down to Earth.
That makes total sense.
It's a radical, yet flawlessly logical solution to terrestrial constraints.
It's brilliant. But honestly, my absolute favorite detail in this entire segment about orbital satellites and trillion-dollar infrastructure is a company called Toto.
Oh, the toilet company.
Yes, the Japanese luxury toilet manufacturer, the
Yeah.
people who make those incredible heated bidets that play music.
Right.
Their shares recently surged 18% to a 5-year high after announcing record profits. And it has nothing to do with bathrooms. They revealed that they are now the world's second-largest producer of electrostatic chucks for NAND chip manufacturing.
It is the ultimate illustration of how deeply the AI physical build-out is penetrating the broader legacy economy.
I am so fascinated by this. How does a toilet maker become the backbone of semiconductor manufacturing? What even is an electrostatic chuck?
Okay, to understand this, you have to understand how a microchip is made.
Right.
Advanced NAND memory chips, the kind required for AI servers, are manufactured on highly fragile silicon wafers using a process called extreme ultraviolet lithography.
Okay, so printing circuits with light.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the machines that print those microscopic circuits onto the silicon require the wafer to be held absolutely perfectly still in a vacuum chamber.
Yeah.
You can't use physical clamps because they would contaminate or crack the delicate wafer.
So what do you do?
Instead, you use an electrostatic chuck. It uses a static electrical charge to magnetically grip the wafer perfectly flat.
Like rubbing a balloon on your hair and sticking it to a wall, but engineered to atomic precision.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Now, what material is perfectly non-conductive, highly durable, completely resistant to thermal expansion, and can be milled to an atomically flat surface?
Advanced ceramics.
Advanced ceramics. And who has spent the last 100 years mastering the molecular chemistry of high-end ceramics? Toto. Their mastery of porcelain and ceramic materials for high-end sanitation unexpectedly positioned them as one of the only companies on Earth capable of manufacturing the ceramic substrates needed for electrostatic chucks.
It is the absolute absurdity and brilliance of the modern supply chain. You have this massive AI revolution driven by the smartest computer scientists on the planet, funded by trillion-dollar hyperscalers, and the whole thing relies on a Japanese luxury bathroom company quietly providing the ceramic grip for the chips.
That's amazing.
It really shows that the physical footprint of AI is touching industries you would never, ever expect.
And all of this compute, whether it's sitting in a vertical tower in Tokyo or orbiting the Earth in a solar-powered satellite, or being printed on silicon gripped by a Toto ceramic chuck, it's not just staying trapped in the digital realm.
No.
The next massive threshold is that this intelligence is being downloaded into physical bodies and tools that interact with us in the real world.
Exactly. We are moving from the data center to the factory floor and even into the streets. The dispatch highlights that over China's May Day holiday, humanoid robots autonomously ran retail kiosks for tourists.
Yeah.
And we aren't talking about a vending machine here. We are talking about a bipedal humanoid robot handing out goods and interacting with holiday crowds.
Which is a monumental leap from the highly structured environment of a laboratory.
Yeah.
We are witnessing the transition from theoretical robotics to practical deployment.
Because the real world is messy.
So messy. Running a retail kiosk in a public space requires navigating highly unpredictable human behavior. People cut in line, they drop things, they change their minds.
Right.
Processing physical objects, conducting transactions in real time, and maintaining physical balance in a dynamic crowd that requires an immense amount of localized compute and rapid formal reasoning.
And it is scaling up in the industrial sector at a terrifying pace. Boston Dynamics, famous for those viral videos of robots doing backflips.
Right, Atlas.
Yeah, Atlas. They are being intensely squeezed by Hyundai, who owns them, to scale up their humanoids. They are moving from producing maybe 4 boutique hand-built robots per month to the tens of thousands needed to staff car-making plants in the coming years.
Tens of thousands.
They even have a massive new manufacturing facility opening just to facilitate this.
If we connect the dots back to the trillion-dollar capex we just discussed, we could see why this is happening right now.
How so?
Well, for decades, bipedal robots were limited by their onboard brains. Making a robot balance on 2 legs while carrying a heavy car door requires solving thousands of complex physics equations every millisecond.
Right.
Historically, the computers required to do that were too heavy or drew too much power to actually put inside the robot. But with the massive leaps in silicon efficiency and AI reasoning, the brain is finally small enough and smart enough.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Boston Dynamics recently retired their hydraulic Atlas and moved to fully electric actuators. Now that the infrastructure is there, the robotics industry is moving from R&D to mass industrial deployment. Tens of thousands of humanoids building cars fundamentally alters the equation of labor and capital in heavy manufacturing.
It is synthetic labor stepping out of the spreadsheet and into the physical world, but the integration of AI into physical engineering is getting even weirder.
Oh, the fire suppression stuff.
Yes. The materials mention that even fire suppression is mechanizing in completely wild ways. Sonic Fire Tech is currently testing acoustic fire suppression with CL Fire California's forestry department.
Right.
They are swapping water for sound waves.
Okay, I have to admit, I am genuinely confused here. How on earth do sound waves put out a physical forest fire?
It's incredible, right? It is a brilliant application of acoustic physics to the mechanics of combustion.
Okay, tell me more.
So to understand it, you have to remember the fire triangle from grade school. A fire requires 3 elements to sustain itself: heat, fuel, and oxygen.
Traditional fire suppression works by dumping thousands of gallons of water to remove the heat, or using chemical foams to smother the oxygen. But acoustic fire suppression targets the local atmospheric environment directly.
Using sound? Like what, playing really loud music at a fire?
Essentially, yes, but very specific, low-frequency sound waves. Sound is just a pressure wave traveling through the air. By directing an intense, low-frequency acoustic wave, specifically in the 30 to 60 hertz range at a flame, you manipulate the air pressure and velocity immediately surrounding the fire.
Oh, wow.
This intense acoustic pressure disrupts what is called the boundary layer of the flame. It literally vibrates the oxygen molecules away from the fuel source.
So it's basically like blowing out a birthday candle, but scaled up to a massive low-frequency bass drop that physically separates the oxygen from the wood.
That is exactly how it works.
Yeah.
A localized, intense acoustic pressure wave causes vortex shedding, basically little whirlpools of air that extinguish the flame without a single drop of water.
That is wild.
It's revolutionary because it eliminates the massive water damage to structures, and it avoids dumping toxic chemical fire retardants into the wilderness. It is an entirely new mechanical approach to a physical problem that we've been solving with buckets of water for 10,000 years.
That is absolutely incredible. But this synthetic capability isn't just restricted to blue-collar labor or emergency services, right? It's aggressively taking over creative economies, too.
Oh yeah, the music industry.
The dispatch notes that a company called Suno already has 2 million paying users and is generating $300 million in annualized revenue. And they do one thing: AI-generated music.
This point is so crucial because it shatters the assumption that AI is only good for automation or data analysis. Synthetic creativity is compounding on the exact same exponential curve as physical robotics.
Which a lot of people thought would never happen.
It's exactly. The fact that a platform can generate $300 million in annualized revenue purely from AI music proves that synthetic art is no longer a novelty. It is a highly viable, rapidly scaling industry. It merges the computational power of AI with the deep emotional resonance of music, creating a personalized product that millions of people are eagerly paying for.
So we are engineering radically new bodies and expressions for AI to inhabit, whether it's a humanoid robot carrying a car door, an acoustic drone fighting fires, or an algorithm composing a hip-hop song.
Yeah.
But the materials take a really fascinating turn here. In the process of building these hyper-advanced analytical tools, we've started turning them inward. We are fundamentally decoding the biology of our own human bodies.
Yes. The text emphasizes that biology is currently being indexed at every conceivable scale. The computational tools we built to model language and physics are now being applied to human tissue. And the implications for medical science are profound.
For example, the dispatch mentions that recent fMRI scans have revealed 3 distinct ADHD subtypes, and one of them is marked by severe emotional dysregulation.
Right.
The author notes that this has finally given the disorder a brain-resolved taxonomy. Unpack that for us. What does a brain-resolved taxonomy actually mean for someone suffering from these conditions?
It represents a total paradigm shift in the history of mental health.
Really? A total paradigm shift?
Absolutely. Historically, psychiatric and neurodevelopmental conditions like ADHD, depression, or schizophrenia have been diagnosed using the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders.
Right, the big book of symptoms.
Exactly. The DSM is essentially a symptom-based checklist. A doctor observes your behavior, asks you questions, and if you check enough boxes, you get a diagnosis. It is inherently subjective, based on external observation.
Right, so it's like trying to figure out what's wrong with a computer by only looking at the monitor instead of opening the case and looking at the motherboard.
That's a perfect analogy. But a brain-resolved taxonomy via fMRI means we are moving from a software-level diagnosis of behavior to a hardware-level diagnosis of physical structure.
Wow.
Functional magnetic resonance imaging allows us to look at the brain's blood flow and neural activity in real time. We can actually look at the scan and see the distinct physical neural pathways that are misfiring and causing severe emotional dysregulation.
We can literally see the ADHD.
Yes, we are tuning psychology into a hard biological science. It means we can eventually move away from trial and error symptom management with broad-spectrum drugs and move toward targeted objective interventions based on a patient's exact neurological hardware.
And we are mapping this biological hardware at an even deeper, almost mathematical level. There's a note here about Johns Hopkins researchers using whole organism 3D mapping to reconstruct the vascular and nervous systems of macaque, mouse, and turtle embryos.
The fractal geometry stuff, this is beautiful.
It is, and this is where the math gets absolutely beautiful. They found that vasculature, our blood vessels, has a fractal dimension of roughly 3. But nerves have a fractal dimension of roughly 2.
Right.
Let me make sure I understand this. A fractal dimension of 3 means it's space-filling, right? Because
Right.
blood vessels have to prioritize physical proximity to every single cell to keep them alive. But nerves are optimized for signal, so they operate more like a 2D sheet.
You've got it. The application of fractal mathematics to biological anatomy is incredibly revealing. It shows us the underlying algorithms that nature uses to optimize complex life forms. The concept of a fractal dimension quantifies how a structure fills space as it branches out infinitely.
So think of it this way. Your blood vessels are like a 3D sponge that has to physically touch literally every single corner of the room to keep the room alive. It has to fill the entire volume. But your nervous system is like a 2D sheet of fiber optic cables plastered over the walls. It doesn't need to fill the empty space in the middle of the room. It just needs to carry the Wi-Fi signal as rapidly as possible from point A to point B.
That is a perfect visualization. A fractal dimension of 3 means the vasculature is maximizing its volume to ensure nutrient delivery is pervasive everywhere. A dimension of 2 means the nervous system is maximizing surface area and minimizing distance to facilitate rapid, unimpeded signal transmission across a network, much like a printed circuit board.
That's incredible.
By using AI and advanced imaging to index these biological structures, we aren't just observing anatomy anymore. We are reverse engineering the mathematical blueprint of life itself.
And as we index life, we are also actively trying to extend it. Longevity research is having a massive moment, and the physical culture of aging is changing. The Dispatch paints this amazing, almost surreal picture. Taiwanese grandmothers aged 89 to 91 are now training with heavy barbells as their super-aged society actively retools its gyms.
It's a radical but necessary shift in how human societies approach senescence and aging.
Why is that?
Well, Taiwan is rapidly becoming a super-aged society where the demographic weight of the elderly heavily outweighs the young. The previous healthcare model of gentle, passive elderly care, water aerobics and light stretching is fundamentally failing to prevent frailty.
Ah, I see.
But building muscle mass and bone density through heavy barbell resistance training at age 90 is a direct biological intervention. Muscle isn't just for lifting. It acts as an endocrine organ, releasing proteins that regulate metabolism and brain function. This is a society proactively re-engineering the aging process to maintain autonomy.
It's an incredible image that completely shatters our preconceived assumptions about what the human body is capable of in its 9th decade. And this drive toward longevity aligns with the more speculative posts mentioned by the author. There's a mention of achieving abundance by 2035 and even the first multi-behavior brain upload.
Yeah, that's where it gets truly sci-fi.
We are literally trying to decode the hardware of human biology so thoroughly that we might eventually digitize it.
The concept of a brain upload represents the ultimate final synthesis of the biological indexing and the massive computational infrastructure we discussed earlier.
How so?
Well, if Johns Hopkins can perfectly map the nervous system's 2D fractal sheets, the entire connectome of the human brain, and Morgan Stanley's hyperscalers, build the trillion-dollar computational power required to simulate those billions of connections in real time.
Then what?
Then the theoretical leap to uploading human behavior transitions from the realm of science fiction into a very tangible engineering problem.
Wow. But as we decode the hardware of human biology, we're also unlocking the mysteries of the other biological intelligences sharing this planet with us. We are moving from human longevity to tracking agents in the wild.
Right.
The Dispatch notes that other species are getting biological upgrades too. There's a mention of a French toy spaniel named Lazare who just hit his 31st birthday, setting him up to be named the world's oldest ever dog.
Which underscores that the breakthroughs in cellular longevity and metabolic understanding are highly cross-species.
But then there's this mind-bending detail about Atlantic salmon. The materials state that when Atlantic salmon were exposed to cocaine,
Yep.
they swam roughly twice as far and dispersed over a much wider area. The massive takeaway here is that it serves as proof that the vertebrate reward circuit is older than the jawbone. We need to unpack this evolutionary timeline because it is fascinating.
This is a profound insight into evolutionary biology. To understand why this matters, you have to look at the phylogenetic tree of life.
Okay.
Atlantic salmon are fish. They represent a very ancient lineage of vertebrates. The fact that their brains react to cocaine, which is a highly complex molecule that manipulates the dopamine reuptake transporters in the brain,
Right.
it demonstrates the deep evolutionary conservation of our neurological systems.
It means that Mother Nature built the software for addiction millions of years before she built the hardware to even chew food. It is incredibly humbling to realize that the biological pathways for reward, motivation, and craving are so ancient that they literally predate the evolution of skeletal bone structure. Before vertebrates even had jaws to bite prey, we had the internal neurochemistry to crave the reward of finding it.
Exactly. The dopaminergic system is foundational to all vertebrate survival. It drives the animal to seek food, mate, and explore. And it highlights how deeply, immutably hardwired these reward systems are across all life on Earth.
And now we are using our most advanced AI technology to interact with these ancient ecosystems without disturbing them.
The Whale Project.
Yes, the materials mention an initiative called Project CET. They are using an autonomous backseat driver glider to monitor sperm whales in the deep ocean. It uses a 4-element hydrophone array to detect echolocation clicks, and it silently steers toward whale pods.
That's so cool.
The most amazing part is that it only changes its buoyancy for a few seconds every hour to keep its acoustic footprint minimal, ensuring it stays more than 100 meters away.
If you look at the engineering required here, it is an absolute masterclass in passive autonomous observation.
Why is that so difficult?
Because sperm whales live in an acoustic world. They use sound to navigate, hunt, and communicate over vast distances in pitch-black water. If you want to study them without altering their natural behavior, your observation tool must be effectively invisible.
And traditional subs are loud.
Incredibly loud underwater.
Right.
By using AI to process the echolocation clicks in real time and navigating solely through micro-adjustments in a variable buoyancy engine, essentially just sinking and floating to catch different ocean currents. Project CEI has created an agentic AI that operates in the wild with unprecedented subtlety.
It's a stealth drone for the deep ocean, governed by an autonomous AI agent, which provides the perfect bridge into how these autonomous AI agents are suddenly being deployed at the highest levels of human civilization.
Right, the government integration.
Yes. The source notes that government itself is being rewritten by AI, whether citizens invited it or not. The United Arab Emirates has just directed 50% of all its federal operations to run on agentic AI within 2 years.
50%.
In 2 years.
So I have to ask, what are the actual risks and rewards of turning half of a sovereign nation's federal operations over to AI agents?
It is arguably the most massive sociological and civic experiment of the 21st century. The distinction between generative AI and agentic AI is absolutely critical here.
How so?
Well, generative AI writes the draft of an email for you. Agentic AI reads your email, decides what to do, drafts the response, sends it, and then updates your calendar, all without you clicking a single button.
Wow.
Now, apply that to a government, the reward is extreme efficiency. Routine administrative tasks, tax processing, resource allocation, and bureaucratic permitting could be handled instantaneously, 24 hours a day, without human bottlenecks or corruption.
But the risks? Because letting software autonomously run half a country sounds genuinely terrifying. The risks involve systemic fragility and the complete loss of accountability. If an AI agent makes an autonomous decision that negatively impacts a citizen, say, it denies a visa, flags a legitimate business for tax fraud, or misallocates emergency resources, who is legally responsible?
Right, you can't put an algorithm in jail.
Exactly. Furthermore, if 50% of your federal government relies on an interconnected agentic system that experiences a cascading failure, a bad training update, or a cyber attack, the entire state's ability to function could be paralyzed in milliseconds. It requires an entirely new, unproven framework for civic governance and algorithmic oversight.
And we already have a stark, somewhat embarrassing example of what happens when that oversight fails completely. The dispatch notes that South Africa's communications minister recently had to publicly withdraw a draft national AI policy.
This is bad.
After it was discovered that the document had been written by AI and was filled with completely fictitious, hallucinated academic citations.
It provides a perfect, sobering contrast to the UAE's ambition. On one hand, we have the brilliance of Project CETI, where AI is subtle and advanced enough to silently track sperm whales via buoyancy changes.
Right.
On the other hand, we have the clumsy, negligent implementation in South Africa, where government officials carelessly allowed a language model to hallucinate national policy without even bothering to verify the references. It proves that while the underlying technology is incredibly advanced, the human application of it remains highly fallible.
It goes right back to the beginning of our conversation. It's Demis Hassabis playing chess against the AI, observing its flawed reasoning. Except in the case of South Africa, the human grandmaster didn't even bother to check the math before hitting publish.
Exactly.
It brings us back to the central tension of this entire dispatch. The tools are advancing at a trillion-dollar pace, but human institutions are still fumbling in the dark, trying to figure out how to wield them.
The curator of these materials, Dr. Whitner-Gross, anchors the entire dispatch with a profound central quote at the end. He says, "Any sufficiently advanced AI is indistinguishable from civilization."
That is a remarkably heavy statement. If an AI can conduct end-to-end physics research, generate elegant math proofs, autonomously run government operations, and write hit pop songs, it is no longer just a tool that civilization uses. It becomes the actual infrastructure of civilization itself.
Precisely. When the intelligence guiding the logistical, economic, and civic systems surpasses the human capacity to fully comprehend those systems, the AI effectively becomes the governing fabric of the world. The tool becomes the environment.
It leaves us with so much to process. I want to leave you with a final puzzle to mull over, building on everything we've explored today. We talked about how the Atlantic salmon proved that our biological reward circuits are older than bone itself.
Right.
And we talked about Harmonic's AI generating these beautiful, perfect math proofs and trillion-dollar physical infrastructure being built to power the ultimate optimization engines. So, if our biological reward circuits are older than bone, and we are now building tireless, super intelligent machines that are perfectly optimized to give us exactly what we ask for, what happens to humanity when we inevitably point these ultimate optimization engines directly at our ancient, hardwired dopamine receptors? Will we seek genuine abundance, or will we settle for the perfectly engineered illusion of it?
That is the question of the century.
To play us out today, we've got a track by Rainbow, our Bavet, Cambodia-based house band composed of 6 ASI-operated gynoids from the near future. They are the undisputed baddest band in the universe, and today's song is called Wild Child. All finished songs are performed live using the Abacus platform by the band's creator, Human Performance in the Age of AI, reclaiming your humanity from the algorithm. Be sure to share the playlist with someone who has the mental bandwidth to absorb these provocative ideas. The link is in the video description below. Enjoy the music. Thanks for tuning in.
I'm singing like I live. My voice so smooth, it's love I give. Rainbows, wild child, that's me. Red's a melody, can't you see? When I sing, time just stops. My voice, it heals, never drops. In the quiet night, my song's alive. I'm the heart of rainbow, shining bright. Red, I'm the soul you all feel. In the music, find what's real. From the shop to the stage, I steal every heart with my appeal. Electric strings I play